one more time, I say it's 7. The young actors and actresses.
You even talked about the kind of sex you like.
It did. In the first film, They Won't Forget.
In 1994, just a few months before her passing, Lana Turner had a discreet and private conversation with journalist Florence Wagner. The woman who had followed her life accompanied her journey and written about her for nearly 2 decades. On a secret cassette tape which had been kept hidden for years and only unexpectedly leaked in 2023, Lana, at that time struggling every single day against cancer, let out a faint sigh and uttered a sentence that left the entire crew in stunned silence. "I once loved 8 women, and in the end, every single one of them made me despise myself." No one could have imagined that one of Hollywood's most dazzling sex symbols, a woman who had once made powerful film producers and even presidents bow at her feet, would possess a list of lovers made up entirely of women. What was even more shocking, however, was the fact that the 7 names Lana mentioned all belonged to legendary actresses, women who had long been regarded as the very embodiment of ideal femininity in American cinema. So then, who exactly were the 7 starlets that Lana Turner publicly declared to be the ones she hated the most? The answer will be revealed right here in today's video. Barbara Stanwyck, The Beginning of a Ruin. If anyone were to ask Lana Turner about her very first love, she would not mention a man. Her answer had always been Barbara Stanwyck, and if pressed on whether she regretted it, Lana never hesitated. "No, I only wish I had realized sooner that it was never truly love." September 1941 at the Paramount lot. Lana had just turned 20, still trembling with nerves, because it was her first time being cast as a lead after the success of Ziegfeld Girl. Barbara walked into the lighting test room without even bothering to knock, dressed in a gray silk shirt, a cup of black coffee in her hand and eyes that refused to look at anyone. Everyone in the room lowered their heads except Lana. She looked up, and that single glance upward sealed the fate of the next 3 months of her life. Barbara never truly loved anyone. What she did was simply choose people to use. For Lana, she needed a public lover to quiet the storm of rumors surrounding her failed marriage with Robert Taylor, while also covering up the endless nights spent with a married producer who had 2 children. Lana had no idea. She believed she was special, especially when Barbara took her to bungalow number 5 behind the Beverly Hills Hotel, a place that Lana would later be horrified to discover had once been the secret refuge of at least 3 other actresses, including one who had attempted suicide there and barely survived. It began with small, pale blue pills that Barbara described as creative relaxation assistants. Lana obeyed because she longed to become like Barbara, proud, icy, needing no one. From pills, it moved to alcohol. From alcohol, it slipped into nights of passing out on the sofa while Barbara remained calm and composed, signing contracts with the powerful distribution moguls. The studio was not blind. They observed, they took notes, and right after a paparazzi photo captured Lana with Barbara at Club Del Mar, she was immediately summoned to the private office of Louis B. Mayer. There she was forced to sign a so-called morality agreement containing one short but chilling clause: avoid personal, intimate relations with female colleagues unless approved by senior PR executives. On that same day, all of Lana's prescribed medications were confiscated. Her personal nurse disappeared without a trace. And in her diary, Lana wrote, "I am being managed like property that is steadily losing its value." The breaking point came on a night at the end of December. Lana arrived at the bungalow earlier than expected and caught sight of Barbara, wearing nothing but a bathrobe, pouring wine for a director who had just won a prize at Venice, a married man who had once rejected Lana for a role because, in his words, she lacked depth. Lana fled, collapsing right in front of the hotel entrance. The official statement claimed she had been hospitalized for exhaustion. But the truth was a violent nervous breakdown combined with uncontrolled withdrawal symptoms. That entire winter, Lana vanished completely from the public eye. When she returned in marriage as a private affair, the public noted that she looked sharper, calmer. Yet that was not genuine maturity. It was the result of deep psychological trauma locked tightly inside a box of pills. And if Barbara had been the first to make Lana lose trust in her own feelings, then the second woman destroyed every last bit of trust in anyone at all, including herself. Greta Garbo was in truth the darkest shadow haunting Lana Turner's memories. 2. Greta Garbo, the secret lover. No one was allowed to mention. Greta Garbo was once the legendary icon of the silver screen in the 1930s, celebrated worldwide for her roles in Grand Hotel and Queen Christina. After her sudden withdrawal from cinema in 1941, she chose to live in seclusion in an old mansion on Franklin Avenue, Los Angeles. Yet few could have imagined that at the beginning of 1946, Garbo would begin a clandestine affair with Lana Turner, who at that time had just completed her recovery following a nervous breakdown at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. Their first encounter took place at a private exhibition by artist Man Ray held on the 3rd floor of the Getty Villa in Malibu. That day, Garbo arrived entirely dressed in black, her silk hat covering half of her face, while Lana entered the room in an ivory-white Dior gown that radiated elegance. Only a few weeks later, Lana became a frequent visitor to the Franklin residence, a house where there were no clocks on the walls, curtains always drawn tightly shut, and classical music echoing through the night without pause. But the veil of mystery soon transformed into an oppressive obsession. On a rainy April night while searching through a cabinet for her medicine, Lana was shocked to discover a small camera hidden inside an old RCA phonograph, its lens pointed directly at the bed. A few days later, a reel of film showing her sleeping, hair disheveled, clothes in disorder, was delivered to her MGM representative. There was no note, no sender's name. Almost immediately afterward, the studio executives summoned her to the Culver City headquarters and forced her to sign an additional contract clause labeled a morality agreement. That document explicitly forbade any same-sex relationships, even in private, for the entire duration of her contract. According to Lana's later words, that very agreement forced me to see my own feelings as nothing less than a sin. Yet the greatest wound she suffered did not come from that cruel clause. Only a few weeks after the threat, Lana unexpectedly saw another woman leaving Garbo's house early in the morning. That woman was Marie Dubois, a French photographer with whom Garbo had once lived in Zurich back in 1943. In that moment, Lana froze. She realized she was not the only one, nor had she ever been the first. She was simply the latest in a long succession of women whom Garbo kept until she found someone else more intriguing. In 1953, when asked directly about her relationship with Greta Garbo, Lana gave only a short but bitter reply: "I once believed I was the ending chapter in her life. Later, I came to know I was nothing more than a repeated scene." 3. Tallulah Bankhead, the woman who turned Lana Turner into a laughingstock. Before 83 powerful eyes of Hollywood, the third name to appear on the list was none other than Tallulah Bankhead. In September 1948, Lana encountered Tallulah at a film industry party held at the Garden of Allah Hotel, a place where extramarital liaisons and forbidden affairs were widely understood yet never spoken aloud. At that time, Lana was still reeling from the aftermath of a loud and scandalous public breakup. Tallulah stormed in like a whirlwind, handed her a glass of gin and tonic, and half-jokingly, half-seriously asked, "Want to learn how to live without ever needing a man?" From there began a series of nights thick with the smell of cigarette smoke and the lingering scent of French perfume. Tallulah led Lana to places where no journalist dared to tread, introducing her to a circle of underground female artists, women who had long been blacklisted from studio matchmaking lists for being too ambiguous in their sexuality. Instead of feeling threatened, Lana felt liberated. For the first time, she experienced the freedom of being herself, embraced a sense of being cared for, and gradually grew accustomed to those arms. Just as she was starting to trust, to believe the affection was genuine, Tallulah decided to rip the curtain wide open. On January 18, 1949, at a cocktail party hosted in a Laurel Canyon mansion and sponsored by Columbia Pictures, with more than 80 of the industry's most influential figures in attendance, Tallulah suddenly demanded that the DJ stop the music and called Lana to the center of the hall. Everyone assumed it would be some kind of tribute or public honor. Lana, though nervous and confused, stepped forward. Before she could even open her mouth, Tallulah raised a ring box, flipped it open, and inside was an old iron bathroom keychain. Bathroom. With a biting voice, Tallulah declared, "For the only one who thought she was my lover when in truth she was nothing more than the keeper of my room key." Laughter erupted across the hall, explosive and merciless like gunfire. Lana froze. No one came to her side. No one intervened to stop Tallulah. Later, a close friend would recall that Lana vomited the moment she got into the car afterward. Not from alcohol, but because for the very first time in her life, she had experienced the raw humiliation of being shamed in public by someone she had once held close to her heart. And just when she thought the ordeal was over, it continued. Tallulah sent a handwritten fax to the Los Angeles Mirror stating only one line: "Hollywood is full of lonely ladies. I simply help them wake up before it's too late." Lana remained silent. She never spoke a word about that incident. Yet years later, in 1957, when asked about the most famous female friendships in Hollywood, she paused for a long moment, then gave a faint, bitter smile and said, "Some people teach you how to love. Others teach you how to spit out what once seemed sweet but turns out to be acid." However, after Tallulah, it was not Lana who chose to close herself off. On the contrary, right behind the scenes of a Warner Brothers soundstage, she was suddenly drawn into another secret affair, this time initiated by a fellow actress who pulled her in deliberately. On this occasion, there was no echo of mocking laughter resonating from a crowd. Instead, there were only threats written clearly and unmistakably in black ink on white paper. That woman was Sheridan. And this story, with all its suffocating weight and lurking danger, went far beyond the cruelty of a bitter joke. For Sheridan, the fabricated affair, orchestrated by the hand of a manipulator. For Lana Turner, Sheridan once seemed like a source of comfort, someone who gave her the feeling of protection during the days when the press relentlessly hounded her after her third divorce in the middle of 1949. They first met at the Los Angeles premiere of The Fountainhead. Anne, striking in a square-necked black gown, leaned in and whispered something into Lana's ear. No one could hear the words clearly, but those standing nearby saw Lana freeze for a moment before breaking into a smile, the first smile she had shown in weeks of silence. From that moment on, the two began holding clandestine meetings in a rented penthouse on Franklin Avenue, booked by the hour under the name of Anne's personal assistant, Evelyn Moore, in order to avoid detection. What Lana did not realize was that behind every laugh she shared, and with every secret she confided about her failed marriage, a Revere hand-crank tape recorder whirred steadily away behind a two-way mirror, capturing everything word for word. The unthinkable eventually happened. One night in October 1949, Lana received an anonymous envelope in the mail with no postmark and no sender's name. Inside was a recording of her private conversations with Anne, along with a copy of a handwritten letter she had once sent to MGM's head of publicity, expressing her wish to renew her contract following her scandalous divorce. At the bottom, a brief note was scrawled, "We are holding much more than this. If you believe your career can survive the exposure of a lesbian affair, then go ahead and try." There was no signature, but the message was unmistakable. Just 2 days later, director Irving Cummings abruptly cut Lana from the cast of The Starlet's Confession, citing psychological instability as the reason. Every call to the studio went unanswered. All advertising contracts were frozen. And on October 14, 1949, after 8 hours locked in her room, Lana swallowed an entire bottle of Nembutal tablets. The first person to discover her was Fred Halverson, the doorman at the Beverly Carlton Hotel. He grew suspicious after hearing the radio in her room play the same song on repeat for 3 hours while the lights never went out. The door was locked from the inside. When he finally broke it open, he found Lana unconscious, her hair wet and matted to her face, blood dripping from her hand cut by shattered glass. On the vanity table in lipstick, a desperate message was scrawled, "If I am not clean enough to be loved, then at the very least I want to be left in peace." She survived after 3 days in a coma, but the news quickly leaked to the outside world. Journalist Clarice Morel of the Hollywood Citizen News was the first to break the story, publishing an article with the headline, "The Spotlight Has Killed a Rose." Within just 48 hours, the piece spread across America, becoming the most talked about scandal in the country. And Sheridan never once visited her. Yet only a week later, she appeared beaming beside producer Jack M. Warner at the Motion Picture Herald Awards, smiling radiantly, her wrist adorned with a sapphire bracelet. The very gift Lana had commissioned for her at Tiffany's in July. And by then, for anyone following the story, it was clear Ann Sheridan was the one who had gained the most from her affair with Lana Turner. 5. Marlene Dietrich, the lover who nearly forced Lana to leave America under the charge of treason. In 1950, when Marlene Dietrich returned to the United States after many long years touring across Europe with the Allied forces, Hollywood welcomed her as though a goddess had descended once more from the heights of Olympus. Yet beneath that radiant exterior lay a tangled world of schemes, carefully staged theatrics, and conquests that carried no trace of love, only possession, manipulation, and the hunger for control. Lana Turner met Marlene at a secret soiree organized by Warner Brothers at the Bel Air Club only a few weeks after Lana had completed filming A Life of Her Own. As Lana stepped into the Grand Hall, Marlene was already seated at the far end of the banquet table, bathed in the glow of chandeliers and the ambiguous stares of onlookers. She wore a simple tuxedo, no jewelry at all, save for a single black glove on her left hand, an understated signal meant only for those observant enough to notice. Whether out of curiosity or the pull of fate, it was Lana who initiated their first conversation. After only 3 clandestine late-night meetings, Lana unexpectedly received a contract from Columbia Pictures, inviting her to play the leading role in an ambitious political film set in East Germany. The strange part was that the script had yet to be published, the director had not even been confirmed, and yet the offered salary was double that of her previous role. And behind the offer stood no one else but Marlene Dietrich herself. In a private moment, she leaned close and whispered into Lana's ear, "You will not only be an actress, you will be the piece I place at the center of the chessboard." From then on, Lana began to appear regularly at Marlene's side during private gatherings of a left-leaning intellectual circle in Brentwood. There, conversations swirled about the Cold War and the power of cinema conducted in French mingled with Russian. Lana could not fully grasp the discussions, but she remained seated beside Marlene nonetheless, a beautiful pawn being moved across the board by another's hand. And then everything collapsed. In March 1951, the Los Angeles Examiner suddenly published an explosive, exclusive investigation under the headline, "Top Hollywood Actress Linked to Pro-Soviet Group in California." The article featured a leaked black and white photograph capturing Lana Turner embracing Marlene at a private party attended by 2 former members of the American Communist Party. By the very next morning, Lana was summoned to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee (HUAC). All of her film contracts were immediately frozen, and MGM's team of lawyers began deliberating whether to sever ties with her completely. And Marlene. She had flown to Switzerland a week earlier, abandoning Lana in the middle of the firestorm without a word of explanation. It was not until 3 months later, in a furtive meeting with Marlene's former assistant, that Lana finally learned the truth: it had never been love. It had been an image strategy all along. At a dinner in Zurich, Marlene had once remarked, Attaching my name to a fading starlet is the quickest way to put me back at the center. And if they burn her, all the better. A beauty consumed by fire is remembered far longer than someone ordinary who dies of old age. Lana had nearly lost everything. She withdrew into hiding in a small house in Palm Springs for more than a year, even considering leaving America altogether to settle in Lisbon with her mother. Her days at that time were nothing but endless hours lying on her bed in darkness, taking light doses of sleeping pills while each week brought a new wave of threatening letters delivered to her door. And yet, if Marlene was the one who had pushed Lana to the edge of the cliff, then the woman who entered afterward, Joan Crawford, was the one who coldly kicked her into the abyss. And this time the cause was not politics, but ambition the stage, and a kiss transformed into a weapon. 6. Joan Crawford, the lover who turned into a lifelong enemy after a destructive contract. At the end of 1952, after barely escaping the political scandal tied to Marlene Dietrich's Lana, Turner received an invitation directly from Joan Crawford herself, an offer for a supporting role which Joan insisted had been written just for you in the Project Torch song. At that point, Lana had almost no options left. The major contracts from MGM had all closed. Her name had quietly been placed by producers on the list of high-risk images, meaning that whenever it appeared in any studio report, investors would hesitate. Joan knew this all too well, and she would use it as a velvet rope tightening around Lana piece by piece. At first, Joan presented herself as though she wanted to treat Lana like a queen, like a secret lover. She bought her elegant Dior gowns, invited her to intimate dinners at her home with Alfred Steele, the chairman of PepsiCo, and her newlywed husband. To Lana, it felt like she had finally found a confidant, a mentor, even a protector in her career. But that was only the surface. Behind the scenes, Joan was carefully staging situations designed to unnerve Lana, deliberately changing lines at the very last minute, forcing retakes of intimate scenes dozens of times, and most humiliating of all, compelling Lana to perform a kiss with another actress in front of more than 80 crew members, despite the fact that such a scene had never appeared in the script. "It's just an artistic kiss if you're truly professional," Joan remarked coldly. But the very next day, photographs of that kiss surfaced unexpectedly in confidential magazines splashed with the sensational headline "Turner trades role for same-sex kiss." Lana instantly descended into a media nightmare. And this time, unlike the past, no one came to her defense. The press devoured the scandal with bold headlines, while sponsors threatened to withdraw support from her ongoing projects. Meanwhile, Joan appeared with calculated serenity on the cover of Life magazine, telling the story of the artistic sacrifice that the two of them had supposedly made in the name of contemporary cinema. It was then that Lana realized she was no longer seen as a human being, she was merely a tool. Joan was the one controlling the entire game. Later, an anonymous former production assistant revealed Joan sold acting contracts like stock shares. She arranged roles, sponsors, and even scandals like a shadow producer. Lana was simply part of that arrangement chosen because she was vulnerable and easy to manipulate. That same week, the Hollywood Mirror published a series of rumors accusing Lana of destroying Joan's marriage to Alfred Steele, driving her into such panic that she refused to leave her house for 2 weeks. In her personal diary on the night of February 26th, Lana wrote a single line: "I took half a bottle of sleeping pills. But then I forced myself up because I cannot let her be the one to write the final sentence of my life." After that near brush with death, Lana disappeared from parties, withdrew from 2 projects that were still under negotiation, and quietly left Los Angeles for a time to receive treatment at a recovery center in Colorado Springs under a false name. Joan, however, remained in the spotlight, draped in silk painted with her trademark red lipstick, and triumphantly stepping onto the stage to accept the Golden Globe for Queen Bee, delivering an emotional speech that perhaps only Lana truly understood, for she alone recognized the venom hidden behind the waves of applause. And then, just when it seemed as if all the pain had finally been buried in the past, another woman appeared, someone who seemed ordinary, almost like a miracle Jean Tierney. Yet no one could have foreseen that Jean would be the one to leave Lana with a silent guilt that haunted her for the rest of her life. 7. Jean Tierney, the woman who burdened Lana Turner with a lifetime of silent guilt. Among all the secret relationships that ever scarred Lana Turner, no name cut deeper or lingered with more haunting persistence than Jean Tierney. The reason was not that their love lasted longer than the others, nor that it was noisy or publicly exposed. It was because Jean was the only one who managed to strip Lana of everything at once: her honor, her career, and even her right to speak out in her own defense. They first met in early 1955 at a charity fundraiser held at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. At the time, Jean had just withdrawn from Hollywood following the scandal involving her first daughter, who had been born ill after a tragic accident with the rubella virus. Lana, on the other hand, was trying to reclaim her place on the silver screen with a string of more conventional roles. By chance, the two were seated next to each other at the honorary table, surrounded by wealthy financiers and several European directors. According to Lana's former manager, it took no more than 2 glasses of red wine and an invitation to step out for a cigarette on the balcony for them to schedule a private meeting the very next day. Their relationship unfolded under conditions of absolute secrecy, but it was far from brief. For nearly 4 months, Jean frequently appeared at Lana's penthouse in Beverly Hills under the guise of being a script consultant. And during that same period, she persuaded Lana to invest $75,000 in an independent film company called Silver Compass, which was promoted as a haven for actresses who had been cast aside by the Hollywood system. But in truth, Silver Compass never existed in any official business registration. Just 6 weeks after Lana wired the money, an anonymous lawsuit was filed in the Los Angeles court, accusing her of being complicit in a money laundering scheme disguised as a fraudulent film investment. Soon after, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner released a bombshell article hinting that a certain A-list actress had either knowingly or unknowingly abetted a financial scam tied to European investors. The consequences were immediate. Every studio abruptly canceled their contracts with Lana. A role in The Swan, which had already been secured with MGM, was withdrawn only 36 hours before its official announcement. The press swarmed her. The studios turned their backs, and Jean vanished from California without leaving the faintest trace. 3 weeks later, Lana was rushed to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in an emergency admission. The medical report diagnosed her with nervous exhaustion and acute anxiety disorder. Nurses testified that she refused to eat, rejected any contact with journalists, and repeated only one plea over and over again: "Please don't say her name. I swear I won't say a word." The FBI eventually opened a preliminary investigation into the money transfer, but in the end, they could not gather enough evidence to prove that Lana had knowingly taken part in anything criminal. Even so, she remained blacklisted from contracts for nearly a year. The only thing she carried away from that ordeal was a solemn vow she would bury that secret with her forever. Years later, in an interview with Motion Picture Monthly, when asked what she regretted most in her career, Lana gave a short, devastating reply: "There are things I was forced to keep silent about. Not because I was afraid of judgment, but because if I admitted them, I would have to confess that I once loved someone who never really existed. No one has ever truly known what Jean Tierney wanted from Lana. Was it love? Was it money manipulation? Or simply a way of avenging her own life by turning someone else into the victim? What is certain, however, is this: after Jean Lana Turner never again allowed herself to love another woman. And she carried that silence along with a wound that never healed all the way to the end of her life." E8. Ava Gardner, the lover who turned desire into an endless escape. In 1954, when Ava Gardner had just returned to Hollywood after a long filming period in Madrid, the entire city of cinema was shaken by photographs of her appearing hand-in-hand with Frank Sinatra in Italy. Lana Turner, who at that time was preparing for her role in The Prodigal, encountered Ava at a wine party hosted by MGM in Beverly Hills. It was said that the very moment Ava walked in with her brown hair flowing loose and her eyes sparkling, Lana, who was so used to being pursued by men, was the one who boldly lifted a martini glass and approached first. The nights that followed took place inside a discreetly rented villa in Palm Springs. Ava taught Lana how to smoke Cuban cigars, while Lana taught Ava how to conceal a rendezvous by covering it up with a fake filming schedule. Yet beneath the glamorous exterior, Ava carried within herself a wild fire that Lana had never once touched. There were nights when Ava vanished for hours, leaving Lana alone in a room heavy with the scent of gin and Guerlain perfume. The tragedy began when a blurred photograph landed on the editorial desk of the Los Angeles Times. Ava in a silk robe sitting beside a blonde woman believed to be Lana Turner. The picture was never published, yet it circulated hand-to-hand within the production world. One MGM executive delivered a cold warning: one sex symbol can save the box office. Two sex symbols tangled together will burn the whole studio down. That June, Ava abruptly left the United States to film The Barefoot Contessa in Italy, abandoning Lana in a storm of malicious rumors. The press spread stories that Lana had been jealous that she had shattered the romance between Ava and Sinatra. Ava, on the other hand, nonchalantly remarked in an interview, "I do not believe in eternal love. I only believe in freedom." Lana collapsed under the weight of it all. In her private diary, she wrote, "I once believed Ava could be the one to escape with me from the relentless flashes of the cameras. But in the end, she was the spotlight itself, blazing down on me in the dark, only to walk away, leaving me blinded." In the very last surviving tape, Lana's voice can be heard faint, fragile, yet each word still sharp and undeniable, like a painful confession. "I chose silence because I believed I was protecting them. But in the end, it was they who destroyed me." And those were the 7 women who had walked through Lana Turner's life. None of them wounded her in exactly the same way, yet in the end, every single one left behind the same scar etched deep inside her: a burning hatred and a corrosive contempt for the very feelings she once held as genuine. After nearly 3 decades of being locked away, that tape was finally brought into the light. And now, at this very moment, you are among the very few who know the truth hidden beneath the glittering layers of powder and rouge that Hollywood once worked so desperately to conceal at all costs. So what do you think of the list of 7 starlets who once passed through Lana Turner's life? The women she both loved with reckless passion and hated with every fiber of her being. Was there a name that shocked you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what you feel. And if you want to continue uncovering more earth-shattering secrets buried behind the dazzling spotlight of classic Hollywood, don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you won't miss a thing, and share this video with fellow cinema lovers just like you.